Some people don't drift. They orbit, close enough to take what they need, but never close enough to truly know you. They appear when they're lonely, when they're lost, when they need comfort, validation, or a quiet place to anchor their chaos. But when you need them, when you fall silent, they disappear. According to Carl Jung, these one-sided bonds aren't accidents. They're psychological patterns woven from masks, shadows, and silent expectations. Relationships where you're valued not for who you are, but for the role you play in someone else's emotional survival. Let's break down the hidden psychology behind people who stay close only when they need you. Jung believed every person wears a persona, a social mask sculpted for acceptance. But some masks aren't built for connection. They're built for usefulness. These are the people who treat relationships like tools. They keep you close only when your presence solves a problem, a boredom problem, a loneliness problem, an insecurity problem, or a convenience problem. They don't see you. They see what you can offer. Your patience, your kindness, your silence, your emotional availability. This kind of persona is subtle. They'll say, "Thank God you're here. You always understand me. No one listens like you do." It feels like affection, but it's actually resource extraction, disguised as warmth. And here's the tragic part. They may genuinely believe they care. Their persona convinces even them. But underneath this mask, their behavior reveals the truth. They only show up when it benefits them. They're present during their storms and absent during yours. Jung said the persona becomes dangerous when people confuse it with their true self. The utility mask is exactly that. It's not friendship, it's emotional dependency, wearing kindness like a costume. Behind the mask lies what Jung called the shadow, the pieces of ourselves we hide: neediness, jealousy, fear of abandonment, and the terror of emotional independence. People who stay close only when they need you often have a shadow of dependency. They fear standing alone. They fear their own thoughts. They fear confronting their emptiness. So instead of facing those fears, they outsource emotional stability to you. They use you like a lighthouse, only visible when their world is dark, only relevant when they're lost. But when daylight returns, when things feel stable again, the shadow recoils. They pull away, not because you did something wrong, but because closeness forces them to face their own internal void. Their shadow whispers, "You can't be alone. You need someone to ground you. You need attention to feel real." And you become that someone, not a companion, but a psychological crutch. The sad truth is this: their closeness has nothing to do with love. It's survival. And you were simply the nearest safe place to hide from their own shadow. Jung warned that people unconsciously attach themselves to those who carry traits they lack: confidence, stability, compassion, strength. When someone lacks these qualities, they cling to individuals who radiate them, not to share life with them, but to feed off them. They vent to you endlessly. They rely on you for advice. They crumble in your presence, but appear perfectly fine to everyone else. Because you don't just listen, you absorb, you stabilize, you soothe, you become their emotional battery. And the moment they feel recharged, they vanish. This isn't friendship. It's parasitic psychology, unconscious, but draining all the same. One-sided bonds thrive because the giver believes helping equals connection, but the taker believes receiving equals entitlement. A parasitic bond isn't built on mutual need. It's built on asymmetrical emotional labor. You give, they take. You remember, they forget. You show up, they drift. And the worst part? They often feel no guilt, because in their mind, you're not a person, you're a function. Genuine connection requires an exchange: effort, vulnerability, empathy, presence. But people who only stay close when they need you fear reciprocity deeply. Why? Because reciprocity demands responsibility. It demands they show up for you the way you show up for them. It demands consistency. It demands honesty. Those things terrify them. So instead of forming real relationships, they maintain asymmetrical ones, where you give and they receive, and never the other way around. Jung said vulnerability threatens the ego. To care for you the way you care for them would expose their weaknesses, their insecurities, their emotional limitations. So they avoid it entirely. They keep you at just the right distance, close enough to get what they need, far enough to avoid obligation. They want warmth without responsibility, affection without commitment, support without reciprocation. And so, the bond remains one-sided, not because they don't understand your worth, but because they fear what showing up for you would reveal about themselves. Silence is powerful, and yours is especially valuable to people who only come to you when they need something. Your silence means you won't confront them. You won't expose their inconsistency. You won't call out their absence. You won't demand reciprocity. Your silence protects their persona. It shields their shadow. It allows their emotional parasitism to continue unchecked. So they stay close when silence suits them. When they need a quiet listener, a safe container, a person who won't challenge them. But when your silence becomes your own, when you withdraw, when you stop catering to their needs, they disappear. Not because you changed, but because your silence is no longer serving them. It's no longer convenient. It's no longer a resource. Jung believed people fear the silent mirror, the moment when your absence forces them to face their reality. And your silence, the same silence they used for comfort, suddenly becomes evidence of a truth they don't want to see. They only cared when it benefited them. One-sided bonds survive because they appear mutual. You share deep conversations. You listen to their struggles. They compliment you. They appear grateful. They make promises they don't keep. On the surface, it looks balanced. But Jung emphasized that relationships must be judged by patterns, not moments. People who stay close when they need you create emotional highlights, little bursts of affection to keep you engaged. A heartfelt message, a sudden confession, a dramatic apology. These moments create the illusion of closeness. But illusions aren't connection. They're psychological hooks. Mutuality isn't defined by intensity. It's defined by consistency. Does the person show up when it's not convenient? Do they care when you're not benefiting them? Do they offer support when there's nothing to gain? People who need you for their own stability answer no to all of these. But their small, dramatic moments trick your heart into believing otherwise. That illusion is how one-sided bonds stay alive long after they stop nourishing you. To Jung, the ego craves validation, confirmation that it is important, special, worthy, or superior. People who only show up when they need you aren't seeking connection. They're seeking an audience. Someone who will witness their struggles, their stories, their victories, their pain. You become a safe stage where their ego performs. They tell you things they wouldn't dare tell others. They cry in your presence, but laugh outside of it. They confide in you, not because you matter, but because you're safe. You won't judge, expose, or abandon them. Their bond with you is not based on love, but on the ego's hunger for confirmation. And once the performance ends, the audience is dismissed. You're forgotten until the next act. This is why they return unpredictably, not to check on you, but to refill the validation their ego desperately needs. Jung said that conditional love is a symptom of an unintegrated shadow, and people who only stay close when they need you practice exactly that, conditional presence. Their presence depends on their loneliness, their crisis, their emotional hunger, their boredom, their broken relationships, their need to vent, their fear of being alone, never on your well-being. You'll notice it in their patterns. They reply fast when they need something. They write long paragraphs when they're hurting. They listen deeply when they want reassurance. They're warm, attentive, present. But when the condition changes, when their life stabilizes, when they find someone else, when they feel secure again, they vanish. Their presence dissolves. Their warmth cools. Not because you did anything wrong, but because the condition that required your existence no longer exists. This is not connection. This is conditional proximity. A leash held by their needs, not their appreciation. Here's the hardest truth Jung forces us to confront. You tolerate one-sided bonds because a part of you is participating in the pattern. Maybe you grew up earning affection. Maybe you learned that love comes from helping, fixing, or saving. Maybe you were conditioned to feel valuable only when you're needed. Maybe your shadow craves purpose more than reciprocity. And so you stay. You give. You forgive. You accept crumbs and call it presence. Not because you're weak, but because your unconscious is replaying a familiar script. A script where your worth is tied to your usefulness. Jung said the unconscious seeks completion. It repeats wounds until we recognize them. And one-sided bonds continue until you finally see you're not being loved. You're being used. You're not being valued. You're being extracted. Awareness breaks the pattern. Recognition frees you from the cycle. And the moment you see the truth clearly, the spell collapses. The final step is choosing differently. Choosing consciously. Choosing people who show up even when they don't need anything. To Jung, individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires that we honor our own worth. Instead of chasing bonds that drain us, we begin to seek connections that nourish us. Balanced bonds feel different. They're steady, not dramatic. Consistent, not conditional. Mutual, not one-sided. They don't disappear when you fall silent. They don't panic only when they need support. They don't treat you as a resource. Balanced people don't fear reciprocity. They don't run from vulnerability. They don't hide behind masks or project their shadows onto you. They care not for your usefulness, but for your presence, your soul, your humanity. And when you experience that kind of connection, you finally understand something profound. The people who stayed close only when they needed you were never close at all. They were shadows passing through your life, not souls meant to stay. You deserve balanced bonds. You deserve mutual care. You deserve presence without conditions. And once you choose differently, your life, your relationships, and your inner peace transform completely.